I'm a 34-year-old architect in Portland. 3 months ago, I finalized the adoption of my daughter, Maya. Last Tuesday, while on a business trip, my mother drove her back to the agency. She was embarrassed by my single motherhood. I landed to a voicemail from my lawyer. A family court judge had called within 24 hours. He said the case reeked of custody fraud. My own mother had legally abandoned my child. 24 hours later, the judge called my lawyer. He said this wasn't negligence, it was fraud. My mother had forged my signature on a relinquishment form. The agency accepted it without a single call to verify. The judge called the district attorney. That's when I understood this wasn't just one woman's cruelty. It was a system designed to move children quickly, not safely. A system where a parent's rights can be erased with a forged signature and a lie. The question no one wants to answer. How many other children are being taken from their families the exact same way? I had trusted the agency because they were accredited, because the social worker had kind eyes, because my own mother had driven me there myself for the final interview, smiling at the staff, acting like she was proud. I never saw the knife coming. Let me take you back to where this really began. 2 years ago, I was a single woman with a stable career and a house with a backyard. I had always wanted to be a mother. After my third round of failed fertility treatments, I decided to adopt. I researched agencies for months. I chose one that specialized in domestic infant adoption and had a 97% placement success rate. I didn't know that what they meant by placement was just getting a child into a home. They never talked about what happened after. The home study took 8 months. They interviewed my friends, my coworkers, my landlord. They asked about my childhood, my finances, my mental health. They never interviewed my mother. In hindsight, that should have been a red flag. The family supporting you shapes the child's world. But the agency only wanted to see income and square footage. Character references were just names on a form. When I told my mother I was adopting, she sat in silence for a long time. Then she said, "A child needs 2 parents. What will people say?" I told her I didn't care what people said. She dropped it, but I felt the temperature in the room drop with it. Over the next year, she sent me articles about single mothers struggling. She asked if I had considered fostering instead, as if that was somehow less permanent. She never once said she was proud of me. Then Maya arrived, a 5-day-old girl with dark hair and a quiet cry. Her birth mother had chosen me because of my letter, because of the photos of my backyard swing set. I held Maya in the hospital room and felt something click into place that I didn't know was loose. I called my mother to tell her she was a grandmother. Her voice was flat. "Congratulations," she said. "I hope you know what you're doing." The first year was hard. The sleepless nights, the colic, the isolation. But it was also the happiest year of my life. I built a rhythm. Maya and I had our morning songs, our evening walks. My mother visited twice. Both times she kept her distance, watched from the corner of the couch like she was waiting for me to fail. When Maya started crawling, my mother said, "She's going to need a father figure eventually." I changed the subject. I learned to change the subject a lot. Then came the business trip. A major client in Seattle wanted me on site for a 3-day design review. I couldn't bring Maya. My sitter was unavailable. My mother called out of nowhere and offered to take her. She said she wanted to bond. She said she was sorry for being distant. Part of me knew better. But I was exhausted, and the alternative was canceling a contract worth half my annual revenue. I said yes. I dropped Maya off on a Sunday morning. My mother took her from my arms without a kiss for me. She said, "Have a good trip." The door closed. I stood on the porch for a moment, listening. I heard Maya laugh. I told myself it was fine. Tuesday afternoon, I was in a conference room presenting a mock-up when my phone buzzed repeatedly. I ignored it. When the meeting ended, I saw 23 missed calls, 12 from my lawyer, 11 from a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail from my lawyer was 43 seconds long. He said, "You need to call me immediately. Your mother has surrendered Maya to the agency. She signed your name on a relinquishment form. The judge flagged it within hours. Call me." I don't remember driving back to the hotel. I don't remember booking the flight. I remember sitting on the floor of the airport terminal, shaking, trying to reach anyone at the agency. No one answered. The front desk woman said she couldn't comment. By the time I landed in Portland, my lawyer had already filed an emergency motion. The judge had issued a temporary order halting any placement, but Maya was not with me. She was in a state-contracted emergency foster home. The same home where children wait while the courts decide if they stay or go. My mother had done this at 9 in the morning. She walked into the agency with Maya in a car seat, handed over the forged form, and said I had changed my mind. The intake worker did not check the signature against my file, did not call my phone, did not ask for identification beyond my mother's driver's license. They simply accepted the relinquishment and called the Department of Human Services. When I finally reached the agency director, she told me, "We followed standard procedure." I asked her if standard procedure included letting a grandmother steal a child. She had no answer. The judge had one. He scheduled an emergency hearing for the next morning. My mother was notified. She didn't respond. My lawyer said the judge was furious, not just about my case, about what he had seen before. In the discovery process, my lawyer pulled the agency's records for the past 2 years. He found 6 other cases where relinquishments were processed under suspicious circumstances. 3 resulted in permanent loss of parental rights. 2 were quietly settled. 1 was still pending. And now mine. The judge said from the bench, "This agency has a pattern of accepting unsigned or improperly authorized relinquishment forms. They have no verification protocol. They prioritize speed over due process. And because of that, children are being removed from fit parents without any oversight." He ordered an immediate investigation. He ordered my mother to appear. She didn't show. He issued a warrant for her arrest. I sat in that courtroom with my hands flat on the table. My lawyer was arguing for reunification. The state was arguing that Maya should remain in foster care until the investigation was complete. They said it was for her safety. I wanted to scream. The person who endangered her was sitting at home, ignoring court orders, and the system was treating me like a suspect. The hearing ended with a temporary ruling. Maya would stay in foster care for 72 hours while the court reviewed the evidence. I could have supervised visitation at a DHS office. Supervised, with my own child. I went home to an empty house. Maya's crib was still made. Her favorite stuffed rabbit was on the kitchen table where she left it. I picked it up and smelled her. Then I called my mother for the first time since the trip. She answered on the first ring. She said, "I did what I had to do." I asked her what that meant. She said, "You're not fit. I saved that child from a life without a father." I told her she had committed a felony. She laughed and said no jury would convict a grandmother trying to protect her grandchild. Then she said something I will never forget. "I wish you had never adopted her. She should have gone to a real family." I hung up. I sat in the dark, and I realized this was never about Maya. It was about control. My mother had spent my whole life trying to shape my decisions. When I defied her by becoming a mother on my own terms, she decided to unmake that choice the only way she could, by taking Maya away. But the worst part was still coming. The next morning, my lawyer called with news from the judge's chambers. The investigation had uncovered something the agency had been hiding for years: a black market of relinquished children. And my mother was not just a customer. She was connected to the people running it. My lawyer, David, spoke slowly, like he was still processing what he had found. He said the black market wasn't what I thought. It wasn't strangers buying bobbies in parking lots. It was legal in a technical sense. A network of agencies, lawyers, and intermediaries who identified children in disrupted adoptions and funneled them to wealthy families willing to pay for a faster process. No waiting lists. No home studies that lasted months. Just a fee, a signed form, and a child transferred like inventory. The agency I had trusted was one of the hubs. They had a quiet department that handled special placements for clients who needed discretion. My mother had known about it because she had worked as a paralegal for a family law firm 20 years ago. She still had contacts. She had called in a favor before I even left for Seattle. The relinquishment was prearranged. Maya wasn't going to foster care. She was supposed to go directly to a waiting family in Oregon who had paid $120,000 for a healthy infant. The judge's emergency order had disrupted that transfer, but the family had already wired the money. The agency was scrambling. My mother was panicking. And David had a recording from a wiretap that the district attorney's office had already placed on the agency's main line. He played it for me in his office. The voice of the agency director, a woman named Margaret who had conducted my home study. She was speaking to someone named Raymond, a placement coordinator. Margaret said, "The grandmother is a liability. She signed the form without authorization. We need to distance ourselves." Raymond asked what to do about the placement family. Margaret said, "Tell them there's a delay. If the court rules against us, we refund half and promise priority on the next one." Raymond asked about the child. Margaret said, "If the biological mother regains custody, we lose the fee. The father is unknown. There's no biological father to contest. The grandmother is the only family member with standing. If she withdraws her claim, the child goes back. We need her to hold the line." I felt sick. They were talking about Maya like a product, a transaction with a refund policy, and my mother was their pawn. David had more. The wiretap had been running for 6 weeks as part of a separate investigation into Medicaid fraud at the agency. They had stumbled onto the placement network. In the recordings, they discussed at least 14 children in the past 18 months. Ages ranged from newborn to 4 years old. The fees ranged from $80,000 to $200,000. The families were vetted not for safety, but for ability to pay. No background checks, no post-placement follow-up. The children simply disappeared from the system, rerouted through a legal loophole called private rehoming. Private rehoming is not technically illegal in most states. It operates by having the original parents voluntarily relinquish parental rights. Then the child is placed directly with a new family through a private attorney, bypassing the state foster care system. There are no records, no oversight, no way to track whether the child ends up safe. The National Council for Adoption calls it unregulated custody transfer and warns it leaves children vulnerable to abuse and trafficking. But because it's structured as a private contract between parents, it falls through every regulatory crack. My mother had been recruited by Raymond 6 months earlier. He had approached her at a networking event for legal professionals, told her about the program. She mentioned that her daughter was adopting a child and that she had concerns about single motherhood. Raymond said they could help. If the adoption fell through, they could find a better situation for the child. My mother saw it as a safety net. She didn't understand she was being used as a pipeline. When I confronted her about this later after she was arrested, she still didn't see it. She said, "I was trying to protect Maya. You have to understand, I didn't know they were selling children. I thought they were finding good families." I asked her why she didn't talk to me. She said I wouldn't have listened. She said I was stubborn and naive. She said the agency told her that I was struggling financially, that I couldn't handle Maya alone. I asked her if she believed them. She didn't answer. The judge ordered a full audit of the agency's placement records. The state attorney general opened a criminal investigation. Meanwhile, my supervised visitation with Maya continued. I saw her twice a day for 30 minutes in a sterile room at the DHS office. She was still too young to understand why I couldn't take her home. She cried every time I handed her back to the social worker. I cried in the parking lot afterward. The news broke on the 3rd day. A local reporter obtained the court filings and published a story titled "Black Market Bobbies: How an Adoption Agency Sold Children to the Highest Bidder." The article named the agency, named Margaret and Raymond, and mentioned that a grandmother had facilitated the latest attempted transfer. My mother's name was redacted, but the story linked to the Stauffer case from 2020, drawing parallels. Suddenly, my private nightmare was public. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, former clients of the agency, other adoptive parents whose children had been placed through the same program. A woman named Carol called me in tears. Her son had been placed through the agency 3 years ago. She had been told the birth mother changed her mind. She never knew the child was rerouted. She had tried to adopt again, but the agency kept promising a match that never came. She suspected something was wrong but had no proof. Another caller was a man whose child had been placed through the network and then returned 6 months later with bruises. The agency handled the return quietly, placed the child with another family, and told the man it was a failed match. He later hired a private investigator and found out his child had been transferred 5 times in 2 years. He never got custody back. These stories piled up. David created a spreadsheet. 14 confirmed cases in the wiretaps. At least 30 more suspected from former clients. The agency had been operating this side business for at least 5 years. The profit estimate was over $2 million. And at the center of it, pulling the strings, was Raymond. He had a background in adoption law, had been disbarred in another state for misconduct, then moved to Oregon and started working as a consultant. He was the architect of the network. He had recruited not just my mother, but at least a dozen other family members of adoptive parents, positioning them as insiders who could identify vulnerable situations. The grand jury was convened. I testified for 3 hours. I walked them through the timeline, the forged signature, the phone calls, the recordings. The prosecutor asked if I believed my mother knew about the money. I said I didn't know. I wanted to believe she was manipulated, but I also knew she had always resented my independence. The money might have been a bonus, but the motive was deeper. 2 weeks later, the grand jury indicted Margaret, Raymond, and 2 other agency staff on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and trafficking. My mother was indicted on forgery and attempted custodial interference. She was released on bail. I didn't speak to her. The agency lost its license. The state launched a review of all open placements. Children who had been transferred in the past 12 months were traced. Some were located in safe homes. Others were not. A 2-year-old girl had been placed with a couple who had prior child abuse charges in a different state, charges that didn't appear because no background check was done. She was found with fractures healing in various stages. The couple was arrested. The girl was placed in protective custody. That was the pivot. Until then, I had been focused on my own case, my own pain. But when I saw that little girl's photo on the news, I understood something crucial. This wasn't about my mother's control issues or my fight to keep Maya. This was a systemic failure that had been hurting children for years, hidden behind closed doors and legal technicalities. And the only reason it was exposed was because a grandmother was stupid enough to forge a signature. If she had simply waited, if she had followed the legal process of adoption dissolution, Maya might have been quietly transferred to another family, and I would never have known. The thought haunted me. How many other parents had lost children this way, believing they had voluntarily relinquished when in reality their signatures were forged, their consent coerced? How many children were living with strangers who had paid for them, while the state looked the other way? I started researching adoption dissolution laws across the country. What I found was disturbing. In some states, the process requires a court hearing and a finding that termination is in the child's best interest. In others, a parent can simply sign a form and hand the child to an agency, no questions asked. There is no federal standard. There is no requirement for the agency to verify the parent's identity or mental state. No cooling-off period. No follow-up. One expert I spoke with, a law professor who specializes in family law, told me that adoption dissolution is a legal gray area intentionally. The adoption industry is largely unregulated, she said. Agencies prioritize placing children quickly to collect fees. The idea that a parent might change their mind or be coerced is often dismissed as rare. But when you look at the numbers, between 1 and 5% of the roughly 135,000 adoptions finalized each year end in dissolution. That's up to 6,750 children per year who are legally surrendered by their adoptive parents. And those are just the ones reported. The private rehoming is invisible. The professor told me about a case in Ohio where a mother was pressured by her own family to relinquish her adopted son, then spent years trying to get him back. She succeeded only because she documented every conversation and filed a lawsuit. The judge ruled that her consent had been obtained under duress. But that outcome was rare. Most cases never reach a courtroom. I realized that my case had become a legal landmark, not because it was unique, but because it was caught on tape. Without the wiretap, without the judge's alert, Maya would already be gone. And I would be sitting in my empty house, wondering what I did wrong while my mother went on with her life. The evening before Maya was returned to me, the judge called a final hearing. The investigation was complete. The agency was closed. My mother's case was pending. The state recommended reunification. The judge agreed. He said, "This child was never at risk because of you. She was at risk because of a system that failed to protect her. I am returning her home with my deepest apology." I held Maya in the courtroom. She reached for my earring, babbled. I cried so hard I couldn't speak. But the story didn't end there. Because the day after I brought Maya home, I received a letter. It was from Raymond, handwritten, sent from jail. He said, "You think you won, but there are hundreds of children like Maya placed through people like me. The system is not fixed. It's just hidden better, you'll see." I put the letter in a drawer. I held my daughter tighter, and I started making phone calls to legislators, to journalists, to the families who had called me before. I realized that the only way to stop the next Maya from being lost was to open the door that had been cracked and throw it wide open. But first, I had to understand how deep the network went, because Raymond's letter pointed at something larger. He wasn't just a consultant. He was a node in a national chain. And the person who connected him to my mother was not Raymond himself. It was someone I had trusted my whole life. I spent that night going through old family records. Photos, emails, legal documents my mother had kept in a box in her closet. And there it was, a letter from my father, dated 2 years before Maya was born. He was writing to my mother about a business opportunity he had discovered. A way to make money, he said, helping families find children. He had met a man named Raymond at a bar association event. Raymond was looking for referral partners. My father had agreed to be one. My father was not in my life. He left when I was 6. But he had remained in contact with my mother quietly as a co-conspirator. He had introduced Raymond to her. He had told her that if I adopted, she could fix it by using the placement network. He had been the architect of the entire plan. I had not spoken to him in 28 years. I had believed he was irrelevant, but he was the one who had set this in motion. I called David the next morning. He said the prosecutor's office had already found evidence of my father's involvement. There were emails between him and Raymond discussing fees, referring other family members of adoptive parents. He had been paid over $50,000 in referral bonuses. He had targeted people he knew from the old days, people with influence over their children's lives. I felt the floor drop. My father had never wanted me. He had abandoned me. And then he found a way to profit from my choices, even from a distance. David said the investigation was expanding. Federal authorities had been notified because the network crossed state lines. The Department of Justice was considering charges under the Intercontinental Travel in Aid of Racketeering statute. This was no longer just Oregon. This was a multi-state operation. I flew to Chicago to meet with an assistant U.S. attorney. She showed me a map with pins. 47 agencies across 23 states had been identified as part of the referral network. They had moved an estimated 300 children in the past 4 years. The fees ranged from $60,000 to $250,000. The total estimated profit was over $40 million. The children were not just infants. They were toddlers, older children, even teenagers. Some were special needs children whose adoptive parents had been told they were too difficult. Some were children from disrupted international adoptions. All were moved without court oversight. I sat in that federal building with a printout of the map. My pin in Portland was just one. And my mother, who had thought she was making a single decision, had actually been part of something far larger. The assistant U.S. attorney said they had already arrested Raymond and 12 others. But the network was not broken. The demand was still there. Wealthy families, desperate for children, were willing to pay anything. And there were always intermediaries willing to supply them. She told me about a case in Texas where a child had been transferred 3 times in 18 months, each time for a higher fee. The last transfer was to a couple who later admitted they had no intention of raising her. They wanted a child to use as a prop for social media. They posted photos, collected followers, then abandoned the child when she stopped being profitable. She was found living in a closet. She was 3 years old. That was the worst moment, not just because of the cruelty, but because I realized that my own case was a narrow escape. Maya could have ended up anywhere. She could have been a prop. She could have been hurt. And the only reason she wasn't was because a judge happened to catch a forged signature within 24 hours. That was luck, not a system. Luck. I started attending the federal hearings via video link. I saw Raymond in his orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller than I imagined. He pleaded not guilty. His lawyer argued that the transfers were legal because they were structured as private adoptions with consent. The government argued that consent was obtained through fraud and coercion, that many adoptive parents were misled about the true nature of the arrangement. The trial was set for 8 months out. Meanwhile, my mother's case was moving faster. She had a separate hearing for the forgery charge. The judge offered her a plea deal: 6 months in county jail, probation, and a requirement to undergo psychological evaluation. She refused. She insisted she had acted out of love. I testified at her hearing. I sat on the stand and looked at her. She looked back with an expression I had seen before, the same one she wore when she told me I was making a mistake adopting Maya. Certainty. She believed she was the victim. The prosecutor asked me to describe the day I found out. I did. My mother cried. But I did not. I was done crying. The judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence for trial. Bond was revoked. My mother was taken into custody. I watched her be led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. She turned and said, "I did this for you." I said nothing. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked me if I felt satisfied. I said, "I feel tired." I went home and held Maya for 2 hours. But the investigation was not over. The federal agent assigned to the case called me with an update. They had traced the network's financial records. They had found a shell company that processed payments. And they had identified the ultimate beneficiary. It was not Raymond. It was not my father. It was a nonprofit organization that claimed to support adoption alternatives. They had received over $10 million in disguised payments over 5 years. The nonprofit was run by a former judge who had been involved in adoption placements for decades. That former judge was the one who had originally certified my adoption agency. He had signed off on their license renewals. He had been on their board, and he had been receiving kickbacks. The system that was supposed to protect children had been compromised from the top. I looked at Maya that night, asleep in her crib. I thought about all the children whose cases never made it to a judge, whose parents never fought back, who simply disappeared into the gaps. I thought about the letter Raymond had sent me. He was right. The system was not fixed. It was just hidden better. But now the curtain was pulled back, and I had a choice. I could go back to my quiet life, grateful that my daughter was safe, or I could help make sure no other mother would have to fight for her child the way I did. I started making calls, not to journalists this time, to legislators, to advocacy groups, to other families who had lost children to the network. I asked them to tell their stories. I compiled a report. I sent it to every state attorney general. I testified before a Senate committee. The hearing was in Washington. I sat at a long table with microphones and cameras. I told them about Maya. I told them about my mother. I told them about the black market of children. I told them about the judge who was supposed to protect them. I said, the system is broken, but it is not broken because of bad people. It is broken because we allowed it to be. We trusted agencies to police themselves. We trusted lawyers to put children first. We trusted that a signature on a form meant a parent was giving consent, but consent can be forged. Love can be exploited, and children can be sold with the right paperwork and the right connections. We have to change the law. We have to require verification. We have to close the loopholes that allow private rehoming. We have to make it impossible for a grandmother to walk into an agency and walk out with a child that is not hers. The room was silent, then applause. It was not for me. It was for the children who had been lost. I hoped they could hear it. After the hearing, an older woman approached me. She had gray hair and tired eyes. She said, "My daughter was taken through that network. I found out 10 years later. I never got her back, thank you." I hugged her. I cried, not for myself. For all the mothers who didn't get a courtroom, didn't get a judge, didn't get a letter from jail that pointed the way. They deserved more than a hearing. They deserved a system that worked. I flew home that night. Maya was awake when I walked in. She reached for me. I held her. And I thought about the future, the trial, the legislation, the long fight. But right then, the fight was not in Washington. It was in my arms, and she was safe. The story does not end there, because the wheels of justice turn slowly. And when they turned, they revealed something I had not expected. Something that would change everything again. The trial of Raymond and the others began 8 months later in a federal courtroom in Portland. I attended every day, not because I wanted to see them punished, but because I wanted to understand. I wanted to see the machinery that almost took my daughter. The prosecution presented wiretaps, financial records, and testimony from 15 families whose children had been moved through the network. One mother testified that she had signed a relinquishment form after being told her child had a developmental delay that she wasn't equipped to handle. The agency had lied. The child was healthy. He was placed with a family who paid $160,000. The mother had never been told where he went. Another witness was a former employee of the agency. She said that Raymond had trained staff to identify weak, adoptive parents, single mothers, low-income families, those with health issues. They were told to offer counseling, then suggest that relinquishment might be the best choice. If the parent resisted, the staff would call a family member who had been pre-identified as a supporter of the network. That family member would then pressure the parent privately, often using guilt and fear. My mother was called as a witness. She had taken a plea deal after all, trading testimony for a reduced sentence. She stood on the stand in a gray suit, looking smaller than I remembered. The prosecutor asked her about the day she took Maya to the agency. She described it in clinical detail, as if she were reading a manual. She said she had been told by Raymond that the child would go to a better home. She said she believed she was doing the right thing. The defense attorney asked her if she knew the signature was forged. She said yes. He asked if she felt remorse. She paused and said, "I felt I was protecting my daughter from a mistake." The room went silent. I felt the eyes of the other families on me. I did not look away. When the trial ended, Raymond was convicted on 15 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and trafficking. He was sentenced to 22 years. His co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 4 to 12 years. The nonprofit that had received the kickbacks was dissolved. The former judge who ran it was disbarred and charged separately. He pleaded guilty to racketeering and was sentenced to 8 years. My mother received 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of probation and mandatory therapy. She was banned from having unsupervised contact with any minor, including Maya. I had requested that condition. It was granted. The day her sentence was read, I sat in the gallery. She looked at me as the bailiff led her away. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it. I nodded once. That was the last time I saw her. But the trial revealed something else, something the prosecution had held back until the final week. During Raymond's testimony, he mentioned a second network, one that operated exclusively online. A private website, invite-only, where adoptive parents could list children they wanted to relinquish and prospective buyers could bid. The site was encrypted, hosted overseas, and had been running for 7 years. Raymond claimed he had only used it once, but the federal agent who testified after him said the site had facilitated over 200 placements, with prices ranging from $20,000 to $500,000. The agent said the site was still active. They had not been able to shut it down because the servers were in a country with no extradition treaty. They had identified some users, but most were anonymous. I felt the floor drop again. The network I had seen was just the surface layer. Below it was a deeper, darker market that no law could reach. The agent also revealed that one of the users was someone I knew, a name I had seen in the emails between Raymond and my father. It was a woman who had been a family friend for decades. She had attended my wedding. She had held Maya as a newborn. She had been one of the people who recommended the agency to me. She had been a referral partner for the online network. She had received payments for sending clients to the site. She had never been charged because the evidence against her was circumstantial, but the government had a recording of her discussing fees with Raymond. She was not prosecuted, but her name was in the public record. I confronted her. She denied everything. I cut ties. The aftermath was not clean. It was not a Hollywood ending. I had Maya, but I also had a permanent knot in my chest where trust used to live. I no longer believed that institutions would protect my child. I no longer believed that family would not hurt me. But I also had something else. I had a purpose. I spent the next year working with a coalition of advocacy groups to draft model legislation for adoption reform. The bill required any relinquishment of parental rights to be witnessed by a neutral third party, verified by the court within 48 hours, and subject to a mandatory cooling-off period of 7 days. It also required agencies to report all disruption and dissolution cases to a central database, with penalties for failure to comply. The bill was introduced in Oregon, Washington, and California. It passed in all 3. Other states began drafting similar laws. The federal government launched a task force to investigate private rehoming networks. I was invited to speak at the signing ceremony in Oregon. I stood next to the governor, holding Maya. She was 2 years old now, babbling, grabbing at the microphone. I said, "This law will not bring back the children who have been lost, but it will make it harder for the next child to be taken. That is enough." After the ceremony, a woman approached me. She was older, maybe 60, with a calm face. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph of a little boy about 4 years old with dark hair and a gap-toothed smile. She said, "This is my grandson. He was taken through that website. I have not seen him in 3 years. I only know he is alive because someone recognized him in a shopping mall in another state. He was with a couple who said they adopted him legally. They did not. He was purchased. I have no legal standing to get him back." She asked me to help. I took the photo. I called the federal task force. They said they could not intervene because the case was in another country. The adoption had been finalized under that country's laws, and the U.S. had no jurisdiction. I looked at the little boy's face. He looked like Maya might look in 2 years. I thought about the online network, still running, still selling children. I thought about the families who would never get justice. I thought about my mother, who had been part of it. I did not cry. I put the photo in my drawer next to Raymond's letter. I held Maya tighter. The story does not end with a perfect system. It ends with a mother who knows that the fight is never over. The world is full of people who would buy and sell children. The only thing that stops them is people who refuse to look away. I look at Maya every night before she sleeps. She is safe. She is loved. And I have taught her the one lesson my mother never learned. Love is not control. Love is not convenience. Love is not a transaction. Love is staying, even when it is hard, even when the system fails, even when the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. You stay, you fight, and you never ever let the black market win. I still have that photo of the little boy with the gap-toothed smile in my drawer. I look at it sometimes when I need to remember why this fight matters. He is out there somewhere, growing up with people who paid for him, and there are thousands like him. Children who exist in a legal shadow, bought and sold through websites that vanish and reappear under new names. The laws we passed are a start, but they only work in states that enforce them. They only work when families know their rights, and they do nothing about the online marketplace that operates beyond any border. I get messages now from strangers, parents who found my testimony online, who recognize their own story in mine. They ask me what they should do if they suspect their child is being targeted. I tell them the same thing every time. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Do not sign anything without a lawyer present. And do not let anyone convince you that you are being selfish for keeping your child. The deepest wound my mother left was not the day she took Maya. It was the years of conditioning that made me doubt myself. She taught me that love was conditional, that I had to earn it by being compliant. It took me a long time to understand that real love does not require you to shrink. Real love does not abandon you at a train station or forge your name on a form. Maya is 3 now. She has my stubbornness and her birth mother's dark eyes. She does not know what almost happened. She does not know that her grandmother sits in a county jail cell tonight. She knows that she is safe, that she is loved, and that I will never leave her. That is the only legacy that matters. Not the laws, not the hearings, not the trials. A child who grows up knowing she belongs. The black market is still running. The website is still active. The buyers are still waiting. But every story that gets told, every law that gets passed, every parent who refuses to stay silent makes it harder for them to operate in the dark. If you are watching this and you have adopted a child, or you are thinking about adopting, do not let this story scare you away from building your family. Let it arm you. Know the warning signs, ask the hard questions, and if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. And if you want to help close the gap, there is a link in the description. A coalition of advocates working to track these networks and support affected families. Your voice matters more than you know. Because the only thing that beats a black market designed to hide children is a world that refuses to look away. I am Sophia Bennett. Maya is my daughter, and this story is not over. But for tonight, she is asleep in her bed, and that is enough.